A Cheese Press History is a 4-year intensive history curriculum with language arts integration and from a whole world perspective. The curriculum is intended for middle and high school students. It seamlessly integrates literature and writing into the program and teaches history from the prevailing scientific viewpoint. Our first volume, Ancient History, is set to be released in August of 2022.
What we do. We teach history in order. We teach history from the viewpoint of many cultures of a time period. We match the history with literature, reinforcing what students learn. We draw from a scholarly research available at the time of publishing and update information on a 4-year cycle. We encourage a research essay each week, along with a midterm project and final project. We teach the history that students must learn to be competitive in higher education. Our curriculum is designed for use with individuals, families, and small groups. What we don't do. We don't ask students to internalize blame or shame for the past history of the world. We don't sugarcoat facts. We don't teach young Earth creationism.
Something happens when you teach world history over a 4-year cycle and in order. First, it allows you to teach in greater detail as you study different time periods each year. Second, it helps students put history into context as they discover how the actions and circumstances of one culture influence another. Also, our approach allows you to teach history to children of varied age groups at the same time. Their homework will be different, of course, but there's no reason that the same history can't be taught to middle and high school students at the same time.
What most homeschool curriculums miss, however, is a whole world approach to teaching history. Long before the people that won the battles were the ones writing about it, entire cultures in forgotten or obscure parts of the world were left out of the narrative of history. In our research and preparation to teach ancient history from the viewpoint of every culture that existed in a given time, we constantly found ourselves stumped at the dearth of pretty much anything outside of the Fertile Crescent. We had to dig through archaeological journals and reports to discover that Nubia was as much a powerful kingdom as Egypt, with each conquering the other at given times. So much, in fact, that at times it can be hard to tell which kingdom really influenced its neighbor. There were Egyptian rulers in Nubia, and there were Nubian pharaohs in Egypt. That is until they were conquered by the Greeks, who began the Ptolemaic dynasty, which ended with Cleopatra, a woman of Greek ancestry. This is probably why the rich culture of this region is watered down, because it was last ruled by people who weren't that interested in its cultural past. It wasn't a malicious action. It was just not a priority to record someone else's past.
Also, most of us learned that the Greek mathematician Euclid is the father of geometry. However, there are strong indications that the principles of geometry were already being applied in the Indus River Valley in what is now known as modern-day India. In other regions of the world, a conquered population's records may have been destroyed by fire, or perhaps they didn't record their history due to the practice of oral tradition. You can't teach what you can't find.
Enter archaeology. What we could not find in textbooks, we found in archaeological studies, in newspaper and magazine reports, in science. The story of all of these cultures and people exists. Their mysteries aren't quite so mysterious as they are dirty and hidden underground. But they exist, and with some time, patience, and a lot of rearranging, we're able to pull together stories and discoveries from all over the globe, and then put them in order by presumed date.
We integrate language arts into our instruction in the form of investigative journalism, or what we like to call rabbit trails. As we have been writing our own curriculum, we found ourselves going off on interesting tangents and realized that there were far too many fascinating stories in history to explore them all, even when spread out over 4 years. So we give it back to the children as homework. It's really fun and sometimes eye-opening to hear the students read their reports at the top of each class, even when they all decide to fixate on and write about the Battle of the Camel. It's even more interesting for students to decide on their own to replicate Roman concrete, even if that were to mean going to Rome and getting seawater.
The ancient time period begins with prehistoric man and ends with the fall of Rome and the story of Julius Caesar. We cover the Stone Age, the Iron Age, and the Bronze Age, discovering early agriculture, architecture, advancements, religion, and philosophy.
Once we leave the ancient time period, detailed written history becomes more abundant for most cultures. In year 2 of our program, Post-Classical or Medieval History, we discuss the Huns, the Vikings, and Chinese dynasties, and their impact on neighboring countries. We learn about the Mongols and European monarchs and their conflicts. While detailed written history is more abundant for many cultures, we also discover more about cultures that didn't have written records through a series of travelers, Ibn Battuta and Marco Polo being the most popular. But it is not only important to learn what happened from famous storytellers, we must also understand who the information came from and under what circumstances. Students must investigate the source material for themselves and not just take someone else's interpretation of that source material as fact. We teach children how to learn and how to come to their own conclusions. This time period starts right after the fall of Rome and ends with the 100 Years' War and the story of Joan of Arc.
We are currently writing year 3 of our history program, Early Modern History, which roughly spans the years 1500 to 1780 AD. It is an in-depth study of the Age of Exploration. This text will discuss the colonization of numerous countries and the slave trade that came from it. This is done in a matter-of-fact manner with no one being asked to internalize the atrocities of history. They just learn the facts and read the appropriate literature of the time period. This period ends with the Declaration of Independence, the French Revolution, and the story, A Tale of Two Cities.
Our final volume, Modern History, will pick up where the last left off and take us on a world tour of the 19th and 20th centuries. History will continue to be taught from the viewpoint of each nation as we navigate civil wars, world wars, and the Cold War. We will read novels that go along with this time period, such as the works of Mark Twain and George Orwell. Because of the abundance of literature, students will get to choose from a list of novels to read each month that go along with that particular time period. For now, the textbook ends with the presidency of Ronald Reagan, as we believe that history is best told from a comfortable distance, where there is public information on the events, and it can be looked at without an emotional connection.
Other texts we plan to release over time are Influencers in American History, Role-Play Government with Economics, Personal Finance, and Entrepreneurship. Our first volume, Ancient History, is scheduled to be released in August of 2022. We are fine-tuning it and editing it at this time.